Hello, Hythloday. I've taken some notes, which I've been doing this and posting at the blog, but just for my own reference. Okay, first thing I want to say, Penrose, I'm not sure you're saying different. I just want to get a couple things straight that I'm taking for granted. Well, one of them taken for granted, one I just want to put out there. I don't think Penrose is saying that G of R can't be proved at all. It just can't be proved with R. Now, why would you expect to be able to prove a rule system with its own assumptions? Well, that goes back to thinking that there's self-causing entities, and okay, you lose God, there's still a priori self-causing axioms. The idea that you could go back to the rules of arithmetic, those are axioms that would have the special property of proving themselves. I wouldn't expect that, because even as a young kid being introduced to even syllogistic logic, you see how you always have to start from an assumption. So inductively, you're always going to have to start from assumptions. But he proved this, Godel, for systems. Okay, so and that's the thing I wanted to say that I'm taking for granted now. G of R is not a statement in R, right? It's a statement needed to prove R that can't itself be proved by R. So you're always going to have a set of assumptions to start another system. Okay, so that's just trying to, you can disagree with that or whatever. I'm not saying that's absolutely has to be agreed on. That's stuff I'm thinking we could agree on. First part, maybe a little bit more of interpretation, but I've seen Penrose talk about this stuff at all, and I differ with him, so which makes me think I really am getting his idea, because I don't necessarily agree with it. But yeah, he believes there's this world of mathematical Platonic idealism, and that it's in some sense real, and that that is the world that we know the truth of G, G of R, that we know the truth that we use to establish the actual rules of arithmetic, because they have been established. Remember, we're not trying to justify math as a cool thing. It's fucking incredibly useful. It's already cool. We're just trying to explain how that is possible. A lot of the truths that we come up with that seem so sure aren't. I have my own ideas on that. You're pointing out that only one technique fails, and I pointed out what I'm talking about with Penrose is that's what he's saying too, and that's why he's invoking this word understanding. There's something non-computational. You need a non-computational technique, right? Insofar as computational techniques are the ones excluded, right? It's only one technique, meaning the technique they tried to prove everything in arithmetic couldn't prove itself. Russell's paradox is important on that too. They're at the fundamentals of mathematics, you probably agree. Okay, so I want to say I don't take myself to be elevating human understanding to another realm. If anything, I'm elevating the understanding of all living things. I'm elevating it, above the non-living. Okay, but I don't really even think I'm doing that. I see a phenomena. All right. Unliving matter, there is not this phenomena. Living matter, there sometimes or always is this phenomena of this intentionality behavior, this Cartesian holodeck. Okay, I see an unexplained phenomena, needs to be explained. Okay, now you talk a lot about the brain doing heuristics, and I think it's interesting you're talking about a trial and error thing. When you're talking about that's kind of a way you figure a heuristic out, but you're talking about this trial and error thing, which is very interesting. It's definite truth to it, and I notice in computers this is especially how you do things. I mean, you just try things basically. So you raise the question of, does the brain do differential calculus? Well, I think yes. It's got some sort of a circuit that can do those kind of computations, but I agree with you too. It's not doing formula, it's doing estimations. It's taking shapes, and there's pattern matching going on, and but still, that's how a computer does calculus. A computer looks to form and calculates, and it can't do infinite sums, so it just tries to, it keeps chopping the curve into smaller and smaller slices, and it converges on a good enough number. It's basically something like that. You know, that's a calculus library. The brain has to at least be doing something like that. You know, and it's worth remembering too that a computer doesn't really, you know, do a calculation like I will do it. What it is you have you know, an addition, a little circuit that could do addition. The given 2 bits can add them together, including, you know, the carry bit in case it wraps around, right? In case you add 1 plus 1. And you just string a bunch of those, and if you put the voltages on one end, the voltage on the other is as if it added 2 numbers, right? You get the answer. But it's really electricity flowing through this circuit that causes that. Alright. So it's something like that with our calculus ability. Yeah, we are plotting, and you know, if you made a computer try to catch that ball, it would have to do, you know, at least applied maths version of calculus. Right, at least the applied mathematics version of calculus. So I think in a sense I get what you're saying, and I agree or accept, you know, that it's not really doing calculus in this sense. It's not doing that symbolic stuff. It's got an approximation kind of system. Like, you know, like you can approximate curves with the French curve if you're doing drafting. You know, you can approximate all these kinds of curves. Doesn't mean that that it really is that kind of curve in nature. So it's like we could have some other system. It's not like we figured out the you know, mathematical formula, obviously. But I think it is valid to realize that computation is going on, right? And in the case of arcs and stuff, you know, to call it calculus is just to take our most accurate way of making those calculations and calling that subject matter that, and then saying, oh, the brain's doing it. But what it's doing is a quick estimation thing. Okay, so but this human trial and error is an interesting thing, because this is the kind of thing quantum computers are going to be good at, right? Trial and error kind of solutions. You know, that's the thing. Now, I've been reading about quantum computers, and it's not like they're going to be able to do all NP hard problems, but you know, there's certain problems that you have to do with brute force in computer science, like the traveling salesman problem. You have to, if you want to know what's the shortest way to go through 5 cities in a map or whatever, the computer, there is no way just to calculate that out. You have to look at all the possible routes and see how long they are and choose the shortest one. Quantum computers are really good at that, because they can try a bunch of solutions at once, right? This is the point of the qubit. If you believe there could be a qubit, and so it's in a 0 and 1 state, when you have a byte of those, instead of being some number between 0 and 255, it's all of those numbers. You know, if you could try to crack a password with a quantum computer, you get to, instead of trying passwords one at a time, you can try all possible passwords at once and this sort of thing. So this is a hint to me that actually the kind of stuff that quantum mechanics might be used in the brain to do. You know, factoring numbers. When you have, you know, savants that can tell you if something's a prime or multiply large numbers in their head, these are the kinds of things that can be done with this trial and error kind of methodology, but it can take ridiculously long amounts of time to try case after case after case, conventionally. Whereas a quantum computer has ways to kind of try all of those cases at once and check all the answers and take the one that worked, right? I wonder why you think Newtonian mechanics relates to our everyday life and somehow quantum mechanics doesn't. I mean, you said at one point you're acting like you said everything is physical. You know, you believe everything is physical, as if it's in contrast to me. This is quantum mechanics. It's 100-year-old physical science of chemistry. It is how we model all chemical reactions. It's physical. Okay, can I just want to remind us all, it's physical. And I don't agree, I understand a lot of people have this view, but about high levels, and at the high level you don't have to worry about it. No, a full understanding of computers, yes, you should decompose it. It's like in my career when I started programming C, you're supposed to learn what machine language it get compiled into. Okay, so I've lost track of that, but in general I know the link by link, so I understand what's happening down the level of those circuits in principle. Whenever you get a high-level understanding improved over a previous version of it, it's usually by understanding the parts better. You know, and the fact that certain approximations still work doesn't mean it's like fundamentally it becomes different. It's not important to think about this when thinking about that. I guarantee you it does come back and be important. So that's the thing about using heuristics in AI. There's a whole field in case-based reasoning, for example, that's basically heuristic-based, and it's had a great deal of success. But the problem is that heuristics are slow. It's one, and also they can be painfully difficult to try, because like if it's a medical thing, you don't want to try something dangerous. You got to try maybe a lesser likelihood, but that is less dangerous to try, or the test is less invasive, right? So whereas again, quantum computers can do some reasoning about heuristics all at once. You can potentially get a formalization of working with arbitrary sets, right? Oh, here was the note. You know, it's natural in chemistry. Yeah, why do you... If I say quantum mechanics is... No, I'm sure it could be explained with Newtonian physics. What do you love about Newtonian physics in that sense? I mean, 200 years ago, it was the counterintuitive weird thing. Galilean relativity, velocity relativity, kind of weird, you know. Why? It's just older. I mean, I'm sure it's explained that we haven't explained it yet, but I'm sure it'll be in there. Well, it's pretty well... I mean, we spent thousands of years on this model. We ended up getting to quantum theory. I don't know why people act like quantum mechanics is looking for a magic thing, because quantum mechanics is magic, right? No. It's not magic. It's physical. You know, when people are minimizing the microbial phenomena, they're just minimizing ours as well. We are made of that. Well, it's just a chemical gradient follower. Then you are. I mean, they go together. Remember, there's various lines we're arguing. One of them, I'm just saying, is there isn't really a distinction when it comes to intentional behavior. There isn't a distinction between us and other life forms. So where's the distinction on the awareness or even consciousness side? Has not been demonstrated. So far we have a lot of similarities in terms of the behavior you can see in another person that leads you to think they're having an internal experience. You can see that behavior in animals and insects and so on, if you look closely enough. A lot of times people are like, oh, but I don't have to look that closely. I know you don't have to. You can be at the water and you don't have to drink. I understand that. But I also would look at QM a little bit, because now, first of all, people say the microbes aren't complex. It's ridiculous. I mean, the cells have millions of chemicals, just chemicals. Millions of different kinds of chemicals, millions of those molecules each. They're pretty damn complex. Now, granted, they're a lot more simple than us. But this is the thing. A very small quantum computer of just a few bits could do some interesting computation. Because of the way they work, it could pull off some interesting computation. So I see how you can miniaturize a quantum computer to that size. So it doesn't prove anything, but it's good enough for a general impression. So I think a good way of having a computing machine that uses these heuristics, like we notice we do as humans, trial and error leading to heuristics, quantum computers are a good candidate for that, because they're good at that kind of algorithm. Basically, the mind does a lot of clustering and thinking of things in sample cases and whatnot. Again, I think a quantum computer would be good at that kind of thing. Yeah, I noticed the poor guy's barking all the time. Anyway, poor guy. So when you say it's all explained in the realm of the physical, quantum physics is the physical. So one way I had heard this about the Gödel's and completeness is that basically it says to prove arithmetic. Another way of putting it that I was taught in school is to prove arithmetic, you need to make statements in second order logic, and in second order logic is the thing that's incomplete. There are statements that can't be proved. So you need second order logic if you were going to prove arithmetic, and then arithmetic once established is complete, but you can't create a system. Okay, then that creates problems because of the paradoxes and statements like that, which have never been dealt with, and it looks like a flaw in the perfect system. I really can't get mad at the dog. I mean, he's just tied there a lot. He relatively comes and moves them sometimes to the front and stuff, but they're scared of him. But when he gets off the chain, he's sweet, but maybe he bit somebody or something sometime. But he's on a little chain. He's got a little dog house and there's green grass, but it's not a very big. No wonder he gets frustrated. What am I supposed to do? Tell him to shut up? I just feel bad for him. Wanted to emphasize that math can't really be undermined. Remember, if we discover math is made of chocolate. Geez, I thought it was going to be more impressive than it. Well, chocolate's pretty good. Oh, it's not even chocolate. It's made of mud. It doesn't matter what it's made of. It's fucking awesome. The more humble that is, the more awesome it would be how useful it is anyway, right? You know what I mean? So I think it's funny when people are trying to like defend math. Or math, you just go into the practical world and look for a while. It's like math is really useful. We're trying to find out why. We're not trying to figure out if it's useful. So it's not just that there's no method to build some of these rules to establish something like arithmetic. It's that arithmetic's supposed to be fairly straightforward, and people were actually hoping that it could build itself, self-cause. Okay, so in skepticism always expected that to fail for thousands of years. 300 BC, coming on, you know, it's like expected that project to fail, and they actually carried it out for thousands of years, and the skeptics are still here going, yeah, that didn't work out, did it? Well, we told you. Can't prove something with itself. You always get to something you assent to, and this basically gets to evolution of the mind. At this point, that's where we are now with that, which is why we need embodied mind cognitive science to answer the questions that we have at the moment. So yeah, math is incredibly reliable. It's a great fidelity. The way I see it is that math and logic are designed not to introduce a distortion into what it's contemplating. Distortion comes in because you have to import these ideas into the logic or the math. You know, for example, to import things into math, you have to look at everything as a number, right? To import things into logic, you have to accept laws of excluded middle, all sorts of things. So to get that good fidelity, you have to distort them, bringing them in. But you don't distort them more while they're in there, or not much is the idea. And you have to be able to translate it out in the end to get back to the real world. You have to you have to turn things into numbers, put them through mathematics, and yet those numbers turn back into real things. And it's all to try not to introduce more error. And it works fabulously. But a lot of what I talk about is that the error you introduce importing things in and out of these logic and these mathematical systems. There's more than one kind of mathematics and logic, because then you make different compromises. Because in general, you have to conform something in the real world into a logical abstraction, which means you ignore certain things about it. You ignore time. You ignore that it takes up space, and you deal with it as though it's a point mass. You always make some compromise in your model. Luckily, there's more than one system, more than one compromise to be made, and you can triangulate somewhere, you know, between them. Right. All right, cheers.